Howdy, howdy. We are live on a Friday night, and I am so thrilled to be joined by Ambassador Dave making his return to the Starship Texas. For some reason, the X-Men are hanging out with Picard and Riker and Crusher behind him. For some reason, StreamYard is insistent that he has that virtual background behind him. So, if
Father, it wouldn't be a Dave appearance without a technical glitch. So
absolutely, it's very nostalgic,
yeah,
very
yeah.
nostalgic.
It was this or even the refrigerator
But
won't get loaded up. But I'm excited to be here, and howdy to everybody out there.
If anyone is curious about it later in the chat, just please someone explain. Podcast audience, it won't matter. But there's a lot to talk about, Dave. We have a made for streaming movie coming in 2 weeks, a kind of a new experiment for the Star Trek franchise. But
Yeah, I don't know a ton about that, so I will. I will. Well, you're talking about the very thing that we're about to talk about. I thought there was you were some other bit of news.
no, that's Section 31. So,
Yes, yes.
but we have opinions. We have opinions on this Michelle Yeoh movie. We're both like, I think we're in the same spot. We both want to like it, but we're both scared we'll hate it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to come up with some interesting notes for this, and we haven't really talked about this in advance, other than months back, as we've talked. Well, years we've talked about this for years, and it's as it's developed, and we've both been nervous the whole time. But I think I came up with some interesting and fun stuff to throw in the mix. So we'll see how it goes.
I'm glad to see there's some people chatting away in the live audience, so we can go ahead and get the show started. I'm Fathery,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 314th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight, I am joined by Ambassador Dave, making his return to the show. He's like Saru. He was the number one, and then he left the ship, but he still shows up every now and then. But he's ambassador now.
I'm gonna try and create a tearjerker moment.
You need a Vulcan wife, though, so.
I will quickly put together a little hand puppet and make the weirdest sequence ever on the Tex-Trek.
Oh, I love that. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the top 3 things we hope we see in the Star Trek Section 31 made for streaming movie coming to Paramount Plus in 2 weeks. And also the number 1 thing we hope we do not see in it. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
And we've got I think, or I don't know if you do, Fathery. We did a few little cheater picks, some smaller things, or I did because we talked about this, which I think might also be fun to discuss.
Yeah, we'll have some runner-ups where we can talk about the things that didn't make our list, or that we thought were too silly but still fun to talk about.
Exactly.
We're veterans of this format. We've been doing this since, I guess, the premiere of Discovery in 2018 was the first time we did one of these.
Yeah, we've done it both for premieres, but we've done it sometimes almost every season, right?
Right. And if they did a theatrical movie, we could do one for that. But I mean, it's funny. We launched Tex-Trek in 2017, right off the hills of Star Trek Beyond, which came out in 2016. That movie had been out it had just barely come out on Blu-ray when we first started working on Tex-Trek, and there still has not been another theatrical movie in all this time.
Yeah, we jinxed it.
I guess.
Trek is better formatted for TV anyway. So
that's true.
if we have to choose between the two, it should be TV. But yeah, hopefully we'll get a movie in there somewhere. It seems like sometimes things are actually percolating.
But we'll get into the Section 31 talk in just a moment. I do need to do a little bit of housekeeping. Starting off, first and foremost, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to the wonderful Tex-Trek Patreon supporters who keep the Starship Texas flying. So thank you so very much. Starfleet, So Hell, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Quark Spar, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A, Joel Vallis, Benjinium, Arthur Lamoureux, our associate producer Chris Garris, Dave Farabee, and our anonymous supporters. And we do celebrate with our patrons monthly. We like to have watch parties at least once a month, sometimes more often than that. The next one is going to be in about a week, Saturday, January 18th. Right? Yeah, 18th. Sometimes I call it the 17th. I don't have Joel here to correct me. Well, he's in the live audience, so he'd let me know there. But January 18th, we're going to be watching the actual episode that introduced us to Section 31, Inquisition, from Deep Space Nine. So that's Season 6, Episode 18. The first one with Sloane and Bashir and Cisco learning about the existence of Section 31. Probably a fun time to revisit that before the made-for-streaming movie comes out.
That was back in the days when people didn't know what Section 31 was.
Yeah, so how does that make sense? But that is something that might come up later in our discussion tonight. But also, I just want to remind everyone that next week's show, on Friday, we will be live with our Section 31 history lesson. I think that's going to be me and Joel, but we're going to be talking about the previous appearances of Section 31 in Trek. That's what I said, right? Section 31 history lesson? Mm-hmm. Okay. But we're gonna be discussing Deep Space Nine episodes, some Enterprise episodes, Star Trek Into Darkness, Discovery, even a little bit of Star Trek Picard. It kind of popped up there on the Daystrom station, and even a little bit of Lower Decks has tiny little sprinkles of Section 31 in it. So we're going to be covering pretty much just the whole history of Section 31. I'll be kind of recapping my plan is this next week, I'm basically going to watch all of these episodes and just, if it's not like a very Section 31 focused episode, I'm just going to fast forward to the Section 31 scenes and take notes and come up with like a history refresh kind of a recap of what has been on screen with Section 31 previous to this movie.
Right on, just the sexy bit.
Yeah, so the people who don't have the time or desire to binge that much Star Trek before this made-for-streaming movie comes out, that's okay. You can just check out the show, and I'll recap it all for you.
Father, is it going to be like, here's all the carefully constructed lore of the past, which they're about to tread upon, and just wipe from the face of the earth?
I could do it in the form of a recap rap. That's a thing on YouTube. I stumbled across that one. It was like, it's like, here's the premiere of CW's Arrow Season 6. So here's a recap rap song about the events of Season 5. And it's just some dude raps about Oliver Queen. And
it's what Section 31 would want.
Well, there does seem to be some exciting music in the trailers and stuff. We had that Beyonce song.
Yeah, so. That's true. It's hard for me to imagine that's actually going to transfer over to the thing itself. It's almost got to be the the
marketing thing.
Yeah, just marketing. But there's going to be a club setting at some point, so we'll see.
Yeah. So about that, we do have a little bit of information. There was some Instagram posts that Paramount did with the different characters that are going to be in the Section 31 movie. They didn't really give much, just kind of like a little blurb, just like a little like one sentence description for the different characters. But one thing they did say in that about Georgiou is that after Carl, the Guardian of the Galaxy, sent her back in time, I guess like she operates a club called the Baram or Baram. Until I guess it's that classic trope of they have to, the agency has to pull her back in. It's like this is such like a badass mission that we need a proven veteran like you. And we're gonna drag you back in.
Yeah, tropes can work for you, or they can be cheeseball. It kind of depends on execution. But it doesn't immediately strike me as like what a mistake to have her running a club, but she's when you come from the mirror universe, you're kind of flamboyant in how you do things, right? They don't like, I mean, yeah, they're scheming and stuff, but they're not like quiet schemers. They wear knives on belts and go bare chested, you know? It's like a club on just the bridge of the Enterprise, man.
And that is the setting she was left in at the end of season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. She was hanging out at that. It was more of like a brothel, I guess, than anything. But in the Orion town on Kronos, which there was a deleted scene in season 1 where Leyland recruits her into Section 31 from in that club. So it's like a repeat of that. It's the George Lucas thing. It's like poetry. There's stanzas that rhyme.
Or maybe just somebody was like, "Yeah, I really wanted to do something with that club. Let's not forget that part."
But I do want to get into our main topic of the top 3 things we hope to see in this movie, and the one thing we hope we don't see. But before we do that, I want to remind people that a couple days ago, I was lucky enough to interview Mike McMahon along with Joel and Aaron. We asked him a ton of questions about Star Trek Lower Decks. We were able to ask a lot of questions that y'all submitted, that the Tex-Trek audience submitted. So it was really cool. Thank you, everyone who participated in that. And thank you to Mike, who sat down and talked to us right before LA went through the hell it's going through right now.
Man, yeah, that's total insanity. That's very awesome that you were able to land that one. That's a super cool way to, I guess, send off the show.
And that being said, though, we might have like a little bit more Lower Decks talk come back in our Section 31 history lesson show next week. So it might not be entirely done with the Lower Decks focus, but for the most part, we are recalibrating the ship's sensors to stop scanning Lower Decks and to zero in and focus in on Section 31. So the rest of this month, January, it's gonna be Section 31 month. Love it or hate it, that's what we're gonna be talking about. So I have a lot of like strong opinions on Section 31 as someone who should be obvious to long-term listeners of the show, but as someone who can be like a little critical of kind of the CIA type, government agency, like I tend to lean pretty far left, and I tend to be kind of critical of imperialism and espionage and
shady doings, coup d'etats on sovereign nations and things like that.
I personally, I kind of think like the American CIA, one of the most damaging organizations that's ever existed in history, and I really don't like having these kind of analogs for them in pop culture that we're supposed to root for. And one of the reasons why I appreciate Section 31 so much historically in Star Trek is because like Deep Space Nine presented them as the bad guy. And even Sisko, the guy who's kind of known for, maybe he's a little bit more Machiavellian, he's a little bit more, this political guy who will do what it takes to get the job done. Even he was like, Dr. Bashir, it is critical we do everything we can to bring down this organization. They're up to no good. They're trouble. So even Sisko knew that. So
yeah, I think it's the idea of it being a sort of a persistent kind of systemic thing. It kind of makes sense that Sisko's like, it's one thing to bend the rules, to go morally gray for a absolutely vital moment in time, but to do it on an ongoing basis is like antithetical to Starfleet philosophy. I was actually just telling my sister-in-law about that, Fathery, that I was talking about this the live stream we were doing. I was like, yeah, there was a Father and I have some mixed feelings about this thing coming up because they have changed how it was presented, how Section 31 is presented, and we're a little anxious about it.
But do hope that I like this movie. I admit that I'm going into it. I'm fully prepared for this to be my least favorite Star Trek show or movie, and if that's the case, so be it. I'll just have to accept it and move on. However, I hope that that is not the case. I hope that I it is a little bit more thoughtful, and in my opinion, a bit more I don't know, ethical, and I come away enjoying it, or at least enjoying parts of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to go into it, and when I made my notes, it was with the idea that it is conceivable they could pull it off. I'm a little worried about it, but it's possible.
So, well, let's go ahead and get started, Dave. I'll let you start as the guest, but just I you, did you rank these like leading up to your number one
I
most?
did.
Okay,
They're almost interchangeable, but I did I did rank them. So
it's more
uh,
dramatic if we're counting down, though.
yeah, so my number three with a drum roll, and this, by the way, this is something that I'm like, people may already know whether this is going to happen just behind the scenes. Like, if you know credits, if you know it would leak, it'd be on casting sheets or whatever. So my number three thing is I would like to see Mirror Burnham and or Lorca. Um, it's the kind of thing that I think would be fan service, but with a point. I think they're both characters that have played a really vital role in Georgiou's Emperor days and afterwards. Burnham as the adopted daughter, and the one person who could kind of bring out the empathy in Georgiou, and Lorca as almost the opposite, the right hand man who became the traitor, her arch enemy.
Hmm.
So I know at least there's some kind of flashbacks to the mirror universe because we see glimpses of a younger version of her of
Hmm.
Georgiou. And I'm kind of hoping that they might sprinkle throughout the episode. They might sprinkle flashbacks, maybe to different eras for her, although it may just be from when she was a kid. I know when you're a movie, you don't have a ton of time. But if they do it, I think that flashbacks to her connection with Burnham when she's making a sort of moral choice, or a flashback to Lorca betraying her when she's making a really harsh choice in the present, could be a really effective kind of visual filmmaking. Certainly they flashbacks can have been used very effectively before. So that's my first thing: Lorca and Burnham. Father E, is this a
Let me
known
ask you this
thing?
though. Let me
Yeah.
ask you this. Like no. If they're in it, it'll be a total surprise. That definitely hasn't been announced.
Okay.
We should say like the some people have seen press screeners for this movie, yeah, but Dave and I have not. Where this is totally blind. We've only seen the trailers, but let me ask you this: what if, because it does have young Georgia, what if it has a younger actor playing Lorca, someone younger than Oscar Isaac's playing that character?
Like him, when they were like a lot allied together
Yeah,
and
they're
stuff.
at like the Terran Academy together. Or I don't know, something like that
That's
maybe.
okay. Obviously there's a certain why can't I say the name of the actor who
Oscar
plays
Isaacs.
Oscar Isaac? There, obviously he's got a great presence. He's, people still miss him, and we're disappointed to some degree when he was a bad guy who would kind of end up ejected from the story. But yeah, I don't think I think I would still be getting something of what I want, because ultimately it's the idea. He's an important person to her life. It doesn't have to be him exactly as he looked on the show on Discovery. But they would get more fan service energy and excitement out of it if they had him did a little bit of that de-aging if need be, or just do some makeup. I don't know. But yeah, I'd allow it. What about you, Father? Is this something that you would want to see?
Yeah, I would love to see more Lorca. I'm kind of surprised that all these years later he hasn't come back. A lot of people, I see Aaron in the live audience talking about Prime Lorca would be cool to see. That's something like fans have been asking for a long time, and uh,
Related? Did we say Jason? Did we say Oscar Isaac?
Jason Isaacs.
Yeah. Oops, our bad. Please don't kill us, Lorca,
Yeah, no,
and
we
everyone
said
else.
Oscar Isaacs, the guy from the other Star franchise,
Yeah,
but also a
embarrassing.
ton of other things.
That's all right. We'll move on. Jason Isaac is who is obviously the boss dude. We mean.
I say the wrong thing. Like earlier when I said Section 31 history lesson, I was like, wait, did I just say like Deep Space Nine history lesson? Because I was looking at my
Mm.
notes and it says like DS9. I say like I think the wrong word for things all the time. That's one thing I'm nervous about. Like, why I don't like to stream by myself because I need someone to correct me whenever I do that.
Yeah. Well, luckily our Cake is Eternal was there for us.
Yeah, thanks, Cake. Uh,
But yeah, is it something that you think would be okay though?
yeah, and I think giving Jason Isaacs the opportunity to play opposite of Michelle Yeoh might be something like big enough to make him come back. He said many times over the years he's very open to returning to Star Trek, but he'd want it to be something kind of meaningful. So he
Yeah.
doesn't. He
Well,
just doesn't want to just like appear in like a little cameo or something. He kind of wants to have like something kind. I don't know, kind of like worthy of to make it worth
I,
his time. It kind of
I guess
sounds like.
it would be a cameo, but it'd be against an Academy Award winner now. So, um, well, presumably depending on how they filmed it, but
Well, for me, my number three. This one's going to be very specific, but I want to know who is San. That if I'm saying it right, like San. San. I want to say it like San Antonio or San Francisco.
mhm.
Uh, Speaking of which, San Francisco, Miss Taylor and I, along with Joel, will be at Star Trek San Francisco in a couple of weeks. Actually, when Section 31 drops that weekend, there is a
Oh,
Star Trek convention, and the home is Starfleet itself, San Francisco. So that's where I'm going to be. So if people see me there, please say howdy.
very cool.
But there's a character, San, who is mentioned by Georgiou very briefly in season 3 of Discovery. This is when her atoms are falling apart because she's removed from the mirror universe and removed from
Mhm.
her time period, and Discovery said that's a no-no. You can only be one or the other, so we're gonna have to send you closer back in time to your original time period. We know that she's not all the way back to the 23rd century. This movie kind of takes place in the what we call the Lost Era, so it's like the early 24th century. It seems with young Rachel Garrett from yesterday's
Mhm.
Enterprise being part of the cast, but. Uh, when her atoms are falling apart though and she's having like kind of those weird flashbacks to her past, she mentions this character San, and right before she steps through the Guardian of Forever to go back in time and she has that farewell with Burnham, she says, I have the quote right here. I wish I'd learned all this before now. I had a chance once long ago. He was called San. I wish I told you about him. And then Burnham says, "Tell the people that you're
Mm.
about to see." So in other words, like I don't want to hear about it. Go tell someone else. It's kind of how
Yeah.
it comes off.
No,
But
that's interesting. That's a deep cut, but it's a that's a big piece of lore that they dropped and I guess just never followed up on yet.
yeah, I'm hoping that shows up in here. I kind of think it will be. We see like a little glimpse of things of her standing over like a bloody body and a mask, just like some quick shots in the season 3
Mm.
Discovery episode Scavengers and the Sanctuary, when she's having those issues and those flashbacks. So I'm hoping that that's what they explore in this movie in the young Giorgio sequences that we know we're going to get from the trailers.
Yep.
Just because that's like a weird, it wouldn't be the first time Star Trek had like a big loose thread that never gets tied up. We're still waiting on the butt bugs to come back from Conspiracy, and we're
Hey, well, we at least we found out who the guy was in Enterprise. Whether
yeah,
fan
we
or
had
not.
Daniel's return, which it's funny you mentioned that, Dave. I showed Taylor that episode last night.
Mhm.
Hashtag Taylor's Star Trek mission. I'm showing my partner all of Star Trek in release order. We're almost done. We just have the last seasons of Prodigy and Lower Decks, and then we're done.
Amazing.
But yeah, she was like, "Oh wow, Kovich was Daniels. Okay, didn't see that coming." But yeah, it was basically the same reaction that we all had. But yeah, we're still waiting. What's going to be the deal with Borg Girardi and that they're those Borg that are the guardians at the gate in front of that
Right.
portal that. It was
Right.
clearly supposed to be part of season 3 of Picard, but they changed things last minute to separate from that. But
Father, I think I was talking about flashbacks that have some meaningful characters. I think you are actually much more likely to be right than I am that they drop in a Burnham or a Lorca, because they don't have to shell out the bucks, work with the schedules. They, Zahn, is that the name?
San.
San.
S-A-N.
San. San. That gives him an original character to work with. It makes more sense for a movie, to be honest, because it's more self-contained.
Yeah. No, what
So
I assume this dude, just based on like the Giorgio dialogue, is that like I don't know, maybe there is a point in Giorgio's life where she's like, maybe I don't want to be a bloodthirsty dictator, and I could like
mhm.
run off with this guy and not do that, but instead, I don't know, maybe she like betrays him, or it looks like he dies. Maybe I don't know, like, but it sounds like this was like her opportunity to be a good guy, and she didn't take it. That's how
Yeah,
I'm reading it. So yeah, maybe that will be something that they flesh out in this movie. That was probably something that they had planned, back when Section 31 was going to be a TV show. It was going to be something explored in that. I think a lot of those ideas might be recycled into this movie because they were cooking this up
right.
before season 2, even before season 2 of like when we only had season 1 of Discovery, nothing else to go off of. They announced a Section 31 spinoff starring Michelle Yeoh.
Father A, I just want a quick mention in the comments. Sohail, it has a very nice spin on the idea of unfinished plot lines. He says there's so many nice little fruits they left behind in all the series for us to revisit. It's a very thoughtful and nice take on it. And I like that, Sohail.
Yeah, no, I actually really think that's cool when storytellers can use those as opportunities for new stories, and I love that. I love when Star Trek, what our friend Larry Nemechek calls using the universe. I talk about it all the time, and I'm hoping that we get a lot of that in this, and that's going to kind of influence some of the other things I'm hoping for. But yeah, I was almost so confident about this, Dave. I didn't include it in my list at all about who is San. But then I thought, like, well, what if they don't? And then I'll be like, I should have pointed that out. That was something like I really wanted to have answered. Who is
Yeah, I
San?
like that.
So I will be a little disappointed because I feel like if we don't get it here, we might never get it. So
Yeah, this is the opportunity.
but shall we move on to number 2?
Sure, sure. Let's do it. This is a less specific and more conceptual thing for me. So the number two thing that I would like to see are gritty consequences, and
I like that.
that kind of goes against a little bit of what the trailers have been. I feel like the trailers have had a vibe that's been very kind of heist movie, James Gunn kind of energy from Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think that's channeling almost the Trek '09 energy too. That Trek '09's got that vibe, and I do think that there's things like that that can work. I kind of made peace with the '09 movies and the Kelvin timeline, and I've had some fun revisiting them. But at some point, I think you have to acknowledge the roots of Section 31. I think it's important that you acknowledge that it violates Starfleet ideals, that they do things that would be absolutely considered war crimes, and I want to go ahead and I want to see the bodies. I want to see the aftermath of some torture sequence. You don't necessarily have to show the whole thing. It's within Star Trek's history to show that. We had a whole episode where Picard was tortured, and it was one of the great episodes of Next Generation. I know it's not going to be the overall tone here. They've made that clear from the trailers. But I think when you get down to the sort of brass tacks serious part of it, the last act and stuff like that, I think we need to see some evidence of how bad Section 31 can be. They surely cannot just be saying, "Oh, this is our new cool spy guys." They do that, man. Oh, that's gonna be a rough one to deal with. I don't think they're gonna do that. So yes, I want to see some gritty consequences, even if it's fighting. If it's not the full tone of the episode of the movie.
Yeah, I I would hope that they do kind of subvert things, maybe like it looks like it's going to be kind of like this fun action romp, and then it actually turns out to be more thoughtful than some of the stuff that like looks kind of tropey in the trailer. Be like, oh yeah, this isn't going to be like the typical Hollywood approach. There is going to be more grit and consequence to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna get that. I'm worried we won't, but I certainly would love that approach to it.
Yeah, I guess I'd compare it to this is a weird example. This is just off the cuff. In Star Trek Into Darkness, they don't go too dark, but when they finally get pretty serious about the big bad guy in it, and they have their confrontation at the end, and I'm just thinking of like that scene where they have to let Khan loose to kind of they're like to try and counter him, and he just like cracks someone's leg. Who is it? It's Marcus, Carol Marcus, right?
Yeah.
He just like stomps her leg and cracks it, and it's very brutal. And it's just a moment, but you're like, oh right, this is who Khan is when it comes down to it. And they also did some of that with the the Badmiral of the piece.
Yeah, like Admiral Marcus is the guy who he's the guy who like wanted to bring in Khan. It's very like Operation Paperclip. I'm gonna bring in this war criminal from the past and put him to work for us because we're the good guys right now. And it turns around and bites him in the ass. Yeah, I kind of like that. Like, say what you will about Star Trek Into Darkness. I know a lot of people don't have a lot of respect for it, and there's a lot to criticize in that movie. It has a lot of silly things in it, but it does have some relevant themes in there. Like, I love it being. See, this is what I'm gonna defend Star Trek Into Darkness right now and talk about like one of the best things about that movie. But it is critical of the Bush administration. It's critical of the Bush doctrine. It was that entire movie was about how the United States reacted to 9/11 the wrong way with like the Iraq war. It's like, oh, we got to go to war with this preemptive war against the Klingons. I will always appreciate Star Trek Into Darkness's themes. So I'm worried that Section 31 is not going to be as smart with that stuff as J.J. Abrams' Star Trek Into Darkness. Yeah.
That is one of the questions is like, can you at least match that? I dare you to do better.
And even in that movie, you had Spock being worried about Kirk's choices and was like, yeah, we can't just launch these torpedoes into Klingon territory to go after this guy. We can't do the type of things that the United States was doing in the Middle East in the 21st century. Basically, we have to be more responsible than that. So yeah, even if the silly JJ action blockbuster movie understood that stuff, I think that this made for streaming movie should be able to operate on that same level.
The challenge has been issued. Section 31. Can you meet it? All right, Father Eth. That was a fun little aside there. Let's hear your number 2 choice of things you'd like to see.
Sure. Well, my number 2 thing I hope we see in Star Trek Section 31 is I would like an explanation for why no one knows about 31 during Deep Space Nine. Like, how the hell does the only reason why this is a big deal for me, this is a big want and a big ask and something that I actually was, when they're talking about like, are they ever going to make this Section 31 thing with Michelle Yeoh? It seems to be in development hell forever and ever, and I was kind of wanting them to make it because I'm such a big canon head that I want this explained, but back when this was going to be a TV show by Bowie Kim and Erica LaPolte, they said on social media, don't worry, we're going to explain that. I was like, okay, well, if you're going to explain that, then let's do it. I'm going to hear you out. Give me the explanation. So that's going to be a fun thing to talk about next week in our show next week when we do the Section 31 history lesson and recap all the previous appearances of 31 in Star Trek and how it's been kind of changed and might even seem inconsistent. But it just to explain it to everyone here, when Section 31 is introduced in Deep Space Nine, it is something that is just kind of, if anything, a rogue agency that might occasionally work with Starfleet that some people in Starfleet might be aware of that are trying to cover it up. Other people, like Sisko and Bashir, trying to expose it. But it's definitely something that most people have never heard of and are completely unaware of. Whereas in Discovery, they seem to be operating much more publicly. So
Yeah, there's a divide here.
So there is an idea, according to Erica Lapolte and Bowie Kim, or there was an idea when they were going to be the showrunners of this TV show before it got turned into a movie. Did that make it into this movie? I kind of hope it did, but I don't know a good way. Like, I don't know. Do they put out like some like does like I don't know. Does Q appear and like erase Section 31 from everyone's memories? Do they
Was
like
it the Men in Black? Did they
do
do the little thing?
yeah, the mind eraser thing. Do they just
Yeah.
like delete all the public records? I think there actually are some ways to make that make sense based on the only people we see talk about 31 in Star Trek Discovery are Starfleet officers, and it's during or shortly after the Klingon War. So maybe Section 31 was like an active part of the war, and people serving during the war knew about it, but it was classified, and they weren't allowed to talk about it, or something. There's ways to kind of bend it and make it work like that. It's weird though because then when we get to Star Trek Picard, which is after Deep Space Nine, but Riker and Worf are talking about talking about Section 31, and Worf even tells Riker, like, "Do you know about Section 31?" And then Riker's like, "Of course I know about Section 31." And that's actually, I really like that episode, The Bounty, but that's my least favorite moment in all of modern Trek. I think is when Worf calls Section 31 a critical part of Starfleet intelligence.
Mm,
I'm like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
Worf, you should know better. You were in Deep Space Nine. Section 31 is not part of Starfleet, and it's not essential. They're actually like the bad guys that Sisko and Bashir wanted to get rid of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a sort of sucky modern, a bad take on Worf. That's like they kind of forgot about him. And I'm worried that this is, Father, that they're just not going to pounce on this at all, that what they wanted to make just had nothing, is not the movie that we want. Of course. Um but if they can come up with an idea for it would be super cool. That'd be amazing if they pulled it off. And there are ways within the Trek universe you could do it. One of my little cheater picks that kind of could almost ride on the coattails if I want to see Lorca and Burnham. Hopefully, I'm not stealing anything from you. Is I would love to see Bashir in there too. And what I want is well, what if Bashir blew the lid on them? We see in a flashback, or we see him remembering talking about it. But then, yeah, they did some kind of, we accessed, and we briefly formed an allyship with a Q, and we wiped it from everybody before that could happen. And yeah, we're sadly in the debt of a Q now. They could come up with something like that, and give Bashir his opportunity to have kind of also, like, the idea being that they went to that extent because they were about to have the lid blown off of it, and then they're like, hey, Q, could you just alter it so that people are kind of accepting of it, or they remember the history different. I don't know. We'll see. I guess I don't want that level of retconning in
Yeah,
there.
and I don't want it to be too big of a diversion from the plot. Like it does bother me sometimes in Star Trek. There's been like a couple of examples in modern Star Trek where the writers make a big mistake, and then they see like a bunch of people complain about it on the internet, but then they go too distractingly out of their way to correct it. Like I thought it was annoying when Ethan Peck Spock in season 2 of Discovery is like, "Oh, I must take an oath to never talk about my sister Michael Burnham ever again." It's like, okay, that was unnecessary. That's distracting. Like, I get that there were a lot of people yelling on the internet, like, "Why does Spock never talk about his sister?" But it's like, how many times has Kirk ever mentioned Sam? See,
Right.
Sam is mentioned twice
Right, and
in,
Spock is an
in Legacy Trek.
Spock is an overtly private person. So yeah, and then sometimes they sort of bungle things a little bit. I don't think people were super thrilled with the what was that? Also a reveal in the last episode of Discovery, the about the future Enterprise, or sorry, future AI thing. I'm blanking.
Control?
No. You remember they tied. Oh my gosh, how can I already be forgetting this? That's just me. Um, they revealed that the intelligence that runs that's on Discovery. What's the name of
Zora?
it? Zora. They revealed the link to that short Trek episode, and people were not wild about that. You remember?
Yeah. Like I didn't think that the end of Discovery. I just watched this episode last night, and it's still kind of weird to me that like, oh yeah, we're gonna go send Zora off to be alone and miserable for 1,000 years just to
Right,
explain Calypso. I still like my
right.
explanation of like that was just a dream, but
Yeah, I just bring it up as an example of them like, hey, let's quick in haste as we film these last few episodes that we're going to be able to film. Let's quick tie some things together, and sometimes they bungle a little bit. But sharp writers can pull off some amazing tricks. So let's see.
yeah.
I'll hope for the best on that one, Father. I like the idea.
Us fans are so terrible sometimes because we're like I demand that they explain this to make it make sense, but I also demand that they don't do it in a distracting inorganic way.
Right, right. And we know that they had to compress this down from a series to a movie, so I'm sure some stuff is on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, and
Like a
I
lot of
would be
stuff.
curious. I hope that someday, it might be years from now, before we can talk to everyone involved and get answers. But I'd be curious to learn like just what was the development, like how different would the show have been from this? How much has changed? Or is this like an actual plot that would have been like in season one if it had been a show, or is this like completely different?
Yeah. I will be interested to hear some of that behind the scenes stuff too.
Well, before we get to the number one thing we hope we see, I have to ask you, Dave, what is
Hmm?
the number one thing you hope we don't see in
Oh,
Star
okay,
Trek
we're gonna
Section 31?
we're gonna drop it in here.
Yeah, that way we can end on a more positive note.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I like it. I had two things in here, and um, I think I'm actually going to go with the one that was not my original choice. I think it's the more interesting one. Um, it looks to me, I don't know how big an overall role Rachel Garrett plays, but I think it's pretty big. I don't want her to just be the straight edge handler who they kind of constantly have to show, no, this is how the real world works, Federation.
Mm.
Um, I mean, there are bigger thematics that I'm a little bit worried about, but in some ways we've already talked about them. And that was something I thought about is like, I don't want the Federation to be like a punchline in this, or its ideals to be a punchline. Well, we're like a little twisted family. We do things our own way, and Starfleet, you'll never get it. So I guess the number one thing is that I don't want to see is Rachel Garrett turned into kind of a joke, a straight edge joke.
Yeah. Yeah, she's Enterprise captain material. She's got to be like a Starfleet hero, and yeah, I get what you're saying. Like if she's just there to be like the example of Starfleet that wouldn't be able to cut it in this mission, and that's why you need Section 31.
Yeah, early on, she's in the trailer. At some point, she's like, "We're here to make sure you don't murder anyone on this mission." And Michelle Yeoh then says she laughs and she's like, "Oh, that's cute," or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure. By the way, that's the same scene. They
Yeah, that could
edit
have just
that
been
kind of
how they cut it. I think
totally.
the lines are. I just watched the trailer to refresh
Mhm.
it before we went live, and I think the lines are something like Starfleet wanted me here to make sure no one gets killed, and then Michelle Yeoh says that's a fun idea or something like
Right,
that.
right. But it does put out that idea that she is going to be the person who doesn't get what they've got to do, and like I know that's going to be the attitude of it. They love to do that in all the movies. Since at least I think Search for Spock, the rebel side of Trek. But you know what? They've kind of always done it. But the movies in particular like to show the crew being rebellious against the system. A lot of Starfleet wants us to turn around. Starfleet wants us to do this. We're going to steal a ship instead. We're going to do this instead. Um, so Trek movies have this history of doing that, and I just hope they're thoughtful enough to make sure that Rachel Garrett, and by broader looking at her, Starfleet doesn't just end up kind of a joke to it.
Right. Like my favorite movie, my favorite Star Trek film of all time, Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. I love that film, but I do get annoyed at Captains JT Esteban and Captain Styles because it's like they're so lame, you know, like Esteban is kind of an indecisive coward and Styles is such a prick. And it's like they got to make everyone else in Starfleet seem lame so that the heroes seem cooler. And I don't like that. I want the Starfleet where everyone in Starfleet is pretty cool. Well, maybe not necessarily everyone, but damn near everyone is super cool. You're still going to have like some Barclays in there. But you know what? Even Barclay can have his cool moments. So yeah, I take that back. Yeah, everyone in Starfleet is cool in their own way.
Yep. It's one of the utopian elements of it. But yeah, that's kind of what I decided to land on. I'll tell you after, if we do a few of our little side things, I'll tell you what the other possible thing I was thinking of. But I'm gonna stick with it.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about like our runner ups last. We can end the show like that. But
so for you, Fathery, your number one or one thing that you don't want to see.
Yeah, the most thing I hope we don't see in Star Trek Section 31 is I don't want to see a story about why Section 31 is necessary. And what I mean by that, why there has to be a group, an agency that has no accountability, that can break all the rules, and that is a necessary part of existence. I think some people feel that way about the real world, and I think I'm sorry I keep talking about real life politics, but it's relevant. But also talking about things like the Bush administration and like the war on terror, but that has informed so much of our worldview in the 21st century. And I think that is a big part of. I was just hearing about like this book recently about how kind of so much of our modern world is informed by the Bush war on terror, and including a lot of our pop culture. And actually, in 2008, the two biggest movies ever were Iron Man and The Dark Knight. And, both movies about how, you need like a guy who's like such like a badass and has like such like cool technology and has like a guy in the chair feeding him information. And he can go in there without any accountability and just kick ass. And he's the not the hero we need, but the hero we deserve, or I think those are kind of interchangeable.
Yeah,
but, it's like that's what we need is like this unaccountable good guys. I think that's a big reason why Donald Trump is so popular and why he was just elected president again, is that a lot of people have this view of him that I don't agree with, but that like, oh yeah, he's a guy who can break the rules and he can get shit done, and they like that idea of someone who can it's almost like this mythical idea of like, yeah, we need heroes that are cool enough that the rules don't need to apply to them. They're just like too big. They're too big for the rules.
Right, which goes all the way back to the trope of maverick cops from the Dirty Harry era and all of that stuff. There's always been a little bit of and that prior to that, it's our mythologizing of the Old West. And the one sheriff who gets it done or whatever. And yeah, Father, this stuff doesn't all happen in a vacuum. Trump doesn't happen without Bush, doesn't happen without Nixon, and all of that. What you're saying is you would prefer not to see those that philosophy in a Star Trek story, and I get that.
I don't want to see like, oh, well, we have, treaties with the Romulans, so we can't go do this. But, maybe like we can secretly go do it. And like, that's okay because we know when it's okay to break the rules and when it isn't. And
yeah. And what's funny is Trek has commented on this often. I think, think back to that early Enterprise episode that I liked where we find out the Vulcans had that listening station in Andorian territory, and we didn't see that. And I think the attitude of the episode was not, look how sly and cool these Vulcans are breaking the rules of international diplomacy.
Right.
It was like, oh man, the Vulcans transgressed. They did something very unethical, and that is Trek philosophy.
Yeah, it was nuanced and thoughtful, and I want the Star Trek Section 31 movie to be like that same level. I want it to be like at least like that Enterprise level of thoughtful and nuanced.
Again, yeah, can you match our somewhat lower level gosh, I can't find the word for it, but yes, can you at least live up to Enterprise? um yeah,
Yeah, like I almost put for like my number one thing that I want is like I want Section 31 to be the bad guys, but then I was thinking like, well, no, that's kind of like that should be like the thing that I don't want. It's like I basically I don't want Section 31 to be like this necessary good guy. You know what I would absolutely like love. This is the way that I would love for them to take this approach. I doubt that they will, but if anyone out there, if anyone at a secret hideout wants to hear like the Stephen Fothery approach to Section 31, if you're gonna make sequels to this movie or anything, I would love for Michelle Yeoh's Georgiou to be like, you know what, the Section 31 agency is actually not a good idea, and they need to be brought down. And I'm going to dedicate myself to taking them down. I'm going to be on that mission that Dr. Bashir and Captain Sisko were on in the 24th century, and I'm going to put them as the target in my bullseye and go against Section 31. I think that would be so much cooler than probably what we're going to get. But yeah, my biggest fear is that this movie is going to be kind of an explanation of why Section 31 is necessary, which I will probably despise if that's the case. But that's the number one thing I don't want.
I think that's legit. And also the thing is, like, I think it would be a potentially great story to tell if they did what you were talking about, Fathery, because we know Georgiou has done terrible things, and she's had extraordinary things happen to her to make her change her ways. And so if someone like her can look at like an agency like Section 31 and condemn it, that's meaningful, within the lore of Star Trek. She's a person who has done ends justify the means. So if she's like, I've seen this story before and I know it just ends in misery, like that would be a great tale to tell.
Joanne Robertson in our live audience says, yeah, I hope this movie puts a bow on Section 31. Put it to bed, honey. And I don't necessarily like want there to not be any more Section 31 stories in the future. I want them to be the bad guys. Like I think that's actually like a good story to tell, is like what if there's a bad guy who's on your side? What kind of moral situation does that put you in? I think that's a really important, fun concept to explore that you can get a lot of great Star Trek stories out of, as in my opinion, Deep Space Nine proves. But I guess maybe I'm like I'm like a weird minority of fans, because it seems Section 31 is very divisive, and it seems like a lot of people are either like they think it's a cool idea or they're very against it. And I'm like, well, I'm against Section 31 as a thing, but I think it's a cool thing to explore in the shows as the bad guys. Like I actually want them to continue to use Section 31 in Star Trek, but just have them framed as the bad guys in that Deep Space Nine style. And not just Deep Space Nine, but also Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek Into Darkness. I think everyone really understood that until it honestly wasn't until I guess Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. Picard being the worst, to be honest. But that line from Worf, they're an essential part of Starfleet intelligence. And then the way that other characters, Picard and Crusher have a conversation where they talk about, like it was Starfleet that created this changeling virus. It's like, well, it wasn't. It was Section 31 back when those are supposed to be two separate things. So yeah, like that line blurring didn't really start until Discovery and Picard.
And that's weird because Discovery, Picard had kind of big Star Trek film energy, but Discovery was known to be highly progressive. If you didn't like it, you're like, it's the wokest of them all. And I was like, how is the wokest of them all the one where they're just like, oh yeah, they're just the black ops. Yeah, sometimes we work with them. Like that's such a weird thing for them to have done. But it's kind of, I guess, an action movie trope, and I did always have criticisms about Discovery doing elements of that. So This is going to be an interesting thing to see. We shall see.
Yeah.
Shall we zero back in and go out on a positive note, on a note of hope?
Sure. I just want to point out that in the live audience, Starfleet Sohel says that he thought the concept was set up nicely in Disco Season 2 with the exchange between Pike, Cornwell, and Leland. So other people are, I guess, or some people are more comfortable with the way of Discovery's handling of it than we are. But yeah, our number one thing that we hope that we see, Dave, what do you got? What's your number one thing you want to see in Star Trek Section 31?
All right. Number one thing I want to see is I want them to let the Academy Award winner show off her acting chops. So when I say that, what I mean is Michelle Yeoh didn't get her Academy Award for her martial arts skills, even though she did do a little martial arts in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And so I want them to give her some scenes to chew on. And the nature of quick cut trailers is you don't get to see those moments really. And we even talked about this a little bit earlier, how like in the, the Abrams, the Kelvin movies, even though those kind of breezy things like Trek 09, there was some memorable dramatic moments that I think people will always, stick in their heads, like George Kirk's final moments, Pike's "I dare you to do better." Even Spock telling his mom before he went before like that Vulcan tribunal that if he decided to take Kolinar and purge all emotion, that it was not a reflection on her. And like that's a really very beautiful scene, and had some dramatic weight to it. And I want them to give those scenes because I know it's going to be a pop movie in a lot of ways. It's just there's almost no way that the trailers are that misleading that it's not kind of pop.
Right.
But you can work within that some very dramatic moments. The script just has to give the actors those moments, and they've got this Academy Award winning actress who is very sought after right now, and I just hope they give her those moments. I want them to give them have those scenes.
Nice. Yeah, I almost went with something like that for my number one. I have some things in my runner-ups to explain as far as Michelle Yeoh goes, but I agree with you, Dave. We have a lot of potential there with a great actor like Michelle Yeoh, but I also do want to see a lot of her badass martial arts and stuff. I want to see that side of it too, but yeah.
What people liked about her on Disco was also her snarkiness and stuff like that, but they showed her grow. She can't just go back to being just snarky. Or shouldn't. I hope they don't.
I'm curious, like, what would be kind of the, like, what are, like, going to be, like, the emotional stakes for, like, what does Michelle Yeoh fight for in this movie? Because the only person she really cared about was Burnham, and with, like, away from Burnham, like, are they gonna give her, like, a new, I don't know, person that she loves or cares about? Or what will it be? Will it just be, like, will they fall back on the galactic level state? Like, if we don't do this, the entire galaxy will be destroyed. Is that going to be her motivation? But
I think your notion, Father E, is a good one to give her somebody who's, takes the role of Burnham in the moment, is a good idea. Yeah, if there's nobody we immediately see her care about, it's kind of a little hard, even if the flashbacks are good and give some, help us understand her and stuff like that. It's going to be a little hard to imagine her rallying and, doing, making the right choice about this or that. If she doesn't have something immediate to hold on to.
Can I do some theory crafting? I'm gonna do some speculative theory crafting. Just pulling this out of my ass right now on the spot. But what if she sees a lot of potential in this young Rachel Garrett and almost kind of like takes her under her wing as kind of like a mentor mentee, almost like mother-daughter type thing, and is like, you have so much potential. You can be like a great Starfleet hero like Michael Burnham was, but like I'm here to like help you and protect you and guide you and make you into like the better the person that I failed to be, you can be, or maybe something.
That's a good idea, Fathery, because we already know that like the one emotional attachment she had before was to a young sort of surrogate daughter.
Yeah,
it's within her mode.
And it's someone that the audience is, the Trek fandom is going to have baked in concern about, because, we all love Rachel Garrett from one of the best TNG episodes, Yesterday's Enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm. It's going to be crushing when this doesn't happen, isn't it?
Or are we writing a better movie than we're gonna see?
It, yeah, and like I know that, like, if the writers were watching us, they'd be like, you don't know the pressures we were under. We had to change it, and we had like 1 week to come up with the full new script after they changed it to a movie, and you don't know about it. Like, but in a perfect world, I think those are some good plot points to hang your dramatic hat on. So
Yeah,
I'm with you, Father. I do hope that happens.
and just to reiterate that's not completely, out of the question. On occasion, people who work on Star Trek have paid attention to our show, and I just want to reiterate that we absolutely are rooting for this movie. We want to like it. We absolutely want to like this.
Yeah, it's the stakes are a little bit higher than
Yeah.
usual for, like, as far as the possibility of failure. And it's weird. Like, sometimes Trek does something and it's just not exactly what I wanted it to be or whatever. But this one, because it has sort of deeper moral implications, potentially, feels a little bit more important. It'll be a little bit more sad if it doesn't happen right. It'll feel like a waste of Michelle Yeoh. So yeah, I do. I really would like for them to pull it off. Certainly, Trek surprised us before, and come through on these things. And like, I'm also looking forward to. I am going to be able to enjoy, I think, some Trek style heisty elements, some Guardians of the Galaxy type stuff. It's not that I can't enjoy that. It's just that I need it to be, even Guardians of the Galaxy has its serious moments. I need those anchors. I need a moral center. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of that though, like a lot of that stuff I also really enjoy, but one of the reasons why that stuff works for me is like the big, I think a big one right now is the Suicide Squad movie that was really popular from Warner Brothers recently, and then it was so well received that they're like, oh, let's just put like James Gunn in charge of the entire DC franchise. So which I'm excited about. I have another podcast, by the way, dedicated to Superman in anticipation of Gunn's Superman movie coming out later this year. Check out the Supermaniacs. But one of the big reasons why that Suicide Squad movie works for me so well is that they present Amanda Waller and the state and the establishment and like the status quo operating all this stuff as the bad guys. And I know, like, you can't really do that in Star Trek. Like, I want the Federation to be good guys, but I want, like, the agency, like Section 31, that the way it was presented in Deep Space Nine is they are the bad guys. So if we do have, like, people working for them, I almost want it to be in kind of like that antagonistic type of relationship where, like, yeah, like, this person that we're working for is, like, they're an asshole. They're a bad guy. They're like Amanda Waller in the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, no, James Gunn went full out with that thematic at the end. There was no denying, like, this is actually a big summer blockbuster that is also very subversive and critical of United States sort of
foreign policy.
Yeah. So,
and he's still doing it on Max's Creature Commandos, the animated show that just wrapped. I highly recommend that too. I
need to finish watching it. It was good.
Yeah, I just watched the last episode, and it broke my heart, but it was good. But it made me cry like a big baby.
That's a win. It's a win. Where are we at, Father? Did we do your number one?
We haven't. I want to point out in the live chat, Starfleet Sohel saying his number one thing is he wants to see Captain Harriman and Philippa meeting, because that would be possible in this time period. So I just want to tie that into the number one thing I want to see in Star Trek Section 31 is I want fun use of the Lost Era that this is set in.
Yeah.
This time between Star Trek 6 and The Next Generation. We don't know much about it. But I would love if we could see some, I know that most of this movie is going to be in kind of dark, grimy corners of the galaxy, like your Mos Eisley type, villainous hives of scum and villainy type of locales. But I would still really like to see some Starfleet. We know that we're gonna get Rachel Garrett, but I want to see her in uniform. Just give me a couple monster maroons here or there. Give me some Lost Era. Let me see some Excelsior class ships, some Lost Era ships, some maybe like a Miranda class or a Oberth or or just like things that kind of look like those. It doesn't have to be those exact designs, but just like similar designs. Or maybe see like what some of the other non-Starfleet people are like. I don't know, like what were the Klingons like in this era, or the Cardassians, or who the hell ever. There's a lot you can explore. I want to see fun use of that. Like I was mentioning earlier about the Larry Nemechek thing of using the universe. I think Captain Harriman would be I would love that if they had like a cameo and it was what's his name, Alan Rook, right?
Yeah. Ferris Bueller's what's his name? Buddy Cameron from Ferris Bueller, yeah.
Because that might be about right in the timeline. About like 30 years after that would probably be around the time that like Rachel Garrett is young, before like the Enterprise C gets lost. So,
I
there's other people too you could bring in. Like what if they had like I'm just saying people who we know would be alive, but like Curzon Dax is probably he's probably like a Federation, diplomat doing some type of stuff. Maybe so hanging out with the Klingons. Yeah, we got like Curzon in his younger days.
What's interesting is like I know writers' room guys would say, hey, we're not here. We're here to tell a story, and everything needs to be in support of the story we're telling. And we're not here to do like a big world universe building. But we've seen how when you do it right, it can be done. Like you can honestly just have a thing where like. Michelle Yeoh says, well, we could flee to the Klingon sector, but they're massing troops after this, that, or the other, some bit of Star Trek lore. And then that fleshes something out. And it still is, working in the moment to say that's not an escape route we can do. You can weave in lore really simply, I think, in, Star Trek lore and stuff like that.
I want to have Jean-Luc Picard show up as like a little kid.
All right, that's pushing it, Father. Yeah, now you've gone over the edge.
And then they go eat at Cisco's restaurant in New Orleans, where it's like a very young Joseph Sisko. He's like this 13-year-old kid, like he's like their waiter, like taking orders at their table or something.
You went full fan service.
Yeah, I went full like other Star franchise, small universe.
And just even mentioning that restaurant makes me hungry, though.
You know what would be fun though is Curzon. We know he was such a horn dog. I want to see like Curzon like try to like hit on Georgiou and just like get his ass kicked or something.
That would be a great scene. That'd be a great scene, man. I love it.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of fun things they could explore here, and it'll be kind of disappointing if they ignore all of the familiar territory, because we've never had anything in the Lost Era. That's why it's called the Lost Era. So. Why set something there if you're not going to use it, is my thinking. So let's show some Star Trek history. Let's get some Wikipedia entries for this time period.
Yeah, why use the Lost Era other than you don't have to worry about continuity too much? I'm like that's kind of weak. Use it to like illuminate it at least a little bit.
But those are the things that we hope we see and hope we don't see. So I want to ask everyone watching or listening to this later, or the people that are here live, but let us know, what do you want to see and what you hope that we don't see. We might share some of that stuff in next week's show. But Dave, let's talk about some of the runner-ups we had. Didn't quite make our list.
Yeah. I've got some goofy shit in here, at least one or two of which are nowhere near as thoughtful as what I tried to be with the other stuff. You ready for a weird one?
Go for it.
Delton Love. I want to see. We ever since Star Trek: The Motion Picture, they've made out that Deltons are just these crazy wild sex machines.
The weirdest line in Star Trek ever, with so little context. But like, don't worry, Captain, my oath of celibacy is on record.
Yeah. That's so
what the hell does that mean?
Yeah, I honestly think they can the vibe of this would be to, I think, make it a little bit comedic. I think if somebody just said, like, what happened between you two? And there was like a series of just like quick flash cuts where you're barely able to tell what's going on. And you're like, oh, is that a fourth person in there? Was that a Gorn? Just like crazy shit.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be yeah, that'd be a funny way to handle it. But
Yeah, I'm not asking for straight porn. I'm saying like straight up porn, not straight porn. But rather go ahead and maybe have a little bit of fun with it at this point. It looks like that character is going to be someone. She's like the Delton in their team of rogues.
yeah, Humberly Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Playing the Delton. They said in the Instagram post like her oath of celibacy is not on record. So
I mean that's a good attitude to have about this.
This Delton fucks.
Yes, let's bring in the second F-bomb for Trek. But anyway, so
they've had several F-bombs. They had Picard
what?
had multiple F-bombs.
Oh yeah. Picard was like
they had two in their final season with the 10 fucking hours and fucking solids.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's keep the ball rolling then.
Now that we've demonetized this YouTube video, that's okay. That's okay. If they say F-bombs in Star Trek, so we can say F-bombs on Tex-Trek is my justification.
Yeah, there we go.
What else you got?
Thanks, Tilly. You saved us all. Okay, this is I already mentioned Bashir. I'd like to see him showing up. There's a guy on the crew in their team who's either a Vulcan or a Romulan, and this is a minor thing, but if whichever it is, I think, do Vulcans have super strength but Romulans don't, or do they both?
Romulans had super strength in Star Trek 09, so I guess they all do. That was the first time we ever saw it, was when like they were beating up Chris Pine. He gets beat up by Romulans a lot in that movie.
So whatever it is, I'd like to see them go ahead and remember that thing, which kind of was really notable back in the TOS days when Spock would get pissed and crush a monitor with a hit or something like that, or just start chucking people around. Mirror Spock going to town and busting people's faces. So I just want this guy. I forget. I don't even remember what his role is.
He's called Fuzz, and they just describe him as
he's like the sociopath, right, or something.
Yeah, a fun-loving guy with an anger management problem or something like that.
Okay, yeah. Let him show that Vulcan strength. Hold a door open that nobody else could. Punch a hole in somebody's chest. Do some crazy Vulcan thing.
I have a theory about him that I just came to me today when I was putting notes together for this show, but I think that that character Fuzz, I think he's going to be the one who dies to show that like there is like danger and consequence. You know how a lot of times in these Suicide Squad type stories, there's always someone who dies early on. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be him.
Okay, I can see that. He's the kind of maybe likably sociopathic character or something like that. And you'll be like, oh, well, he's a terrible person, but he's kind of fun. And
either that or he's going to be the traitor. He might be the one who betrays them if there's a traitor in their midst.
I can see that.
Or the red herring for the actual traitor.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll have to do a little post-op and see if that makes it in. Do you want one more, Fathery?
Yeah, give me one more.
One more. If they do a bit of mirror universe stuff beyond just the briefest of flashbacks, I kind of want them to. I know this is asking too much. I want them to talk. To build on the Spock stuff. Georgiou, in her time, she came before Kirk, right? This would have been, because even having like I'm blurring all my timelines. It was Enterprise that had the other Constitution ship that they were after. But Georgiou would have been like before that too. So this plot point might not work. I was thinking if this was how the idea is that Spock's reforms softened the Terran Empire and paved the way for the Klingon-Cardassian alliance to kick their ass.
Right.
That was the Deep Space Nine thing. But in the comics, at least, they were like, oh, yeah, that was actually a kind of a cover-up. Spock's reforms were working, but it wasn't in the interest of propaganda to know that was happening. And so it got buried and like literally covered up. I was thinking it'd be awesome to bring that into canon. But as I think about it, because Georgiou's time was before Spock,
right?
there's no real reason to bring that in. I was blurring my timeline.
The time period this is set in like the very early 24th century, between Star Trek 6 and TNG would make sense for that, but all of her mirror universe baggage is from well before the original series.
Yep. So all right, I rescind that one. Father, what you got some runner-ups for us?
I thought it would be really cool to see young Michael Burnham. You were mentioning Michael,
Mhm.
but instead of bringing in Sonequa Martin Green to play her, because this would be like teenage Michael, get that kid Arista Aaron, I believe was her name, but the Toronto-based actor who played child Michael Burnham in seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery, when we had like those flashbacks to her on Vulcan
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Sarek and Spock. So I thought that girl did a really good job. And I googled her today, and she's 19. So when they were shooting this last year, she would have been 18, perfect to play teenage Michael Burnham in the Mirror Universe.
Okay.
But they could also recast with a different actor. But I think it'd be cool to see Michael, like you were saying. Also, I want some like fun comedy if they're going to go in like the like silly action romp
Yeah.
approach to this, which you and I both have some criticisms of, but like at least like be funny, like have some good jokes, make me laugh out loud. Sam Richardson is playing a Kamaloid, like Amon in Star Trek 6. He's going to be a shapeshifter, but I don't know, like he's a funny guy, right? He can crack some jokes, right? So he's in that show Veep, which I've never watched, but I've heard great things about.
I've heard very good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. One of the notes that I made was that I kind of, this is a little harsh, but I wanted better dialogue than I saw in the trailer. This is the case for a lot of trailers. That's just kind of how trailers are cut sometimes. But that dialogue doesn't just have to be the serious stuff. I specifically mentioned I want Georgiou to get these kind of deeper scenes. I want Michelle Yeoh to get it, but I would also like some better comedy than the thing where they're beating up the suspect. I thought that was kind of a dopey scene. Um, and
Uh,
and so, but I'm with you. I didn't see enough crackling dialogue like I'd like.
Yeah, maybe they're saving like the good stuff for the actual movie. But another silly thing I had was I want to see Tunde's direction. The director Olatunde Osunsanmi directing this. He was the main director on Star Trek Discovery. If you like the visual style of that show, thank him. If you don't like it, blame him. But I want to see him go like the most crazy he's ever gone with anything. I want to have the camera spinning so much. I want to have like insane like zoom ins, pull outs. Like he really likes playing with the modern cutting edge experimental cinematography. And I think like over the course of Discovery, he did get like a little like too weird around like season 2, but then like he kind of reins it back in. And by season 4, I think he's actually like on fire. The way that show is shot in the last 2 seasons, the way that like they use the AR wall and stuff, I thought was like really cool. So yeah, like let him just like go to town and do like all kinds of like
I like
weird
that.
experimental stuff.
I do. I think there's at least one shot in the trailer where somebody gets grabbed and thrown or something, and that like they do that thing where like the camera moves with the person being thrown, like the camera goes onto the side as in matching the motion of the person being like pitched around or something. But yeah, there's lots of opportunities. These guys have essentially superpower type stuff. Father, are you ready for like a Sam Raimi follow the tracking shot of a bullet from that cyborg guy's
Uh,
being launched?
yeah, Zeph,
Yeah,
the cyborg man.
he's not going to be tied into the actual Borg, is he?
No, that
Or
actor said online. He said, I'm so excited to be this guy in the movie. I'm a big fan, and by the way, I'm not a Borg." To answer all y'all's questions. So,
yeah,
uh,
that's
uh,
probably the big one.
Aaron is pointing out the mirror enterprise that we saw in Discovery may be showing up. And do you remember that, Dave, in the final season of Discovery when they found one of the clues for their treasure hunt? It was on the Terran Empire Enterprise was in that subspace pocket where
Yes,
Spock had sent over refugees
refugees.
from
Yeah,
the Terran Empire. And I actually think that would be the cool story to explore in like the Section 31 movie. I think it's clear that's not what we're going to get. But at the time, I actually suggested, wouldn't this be a great way to tie into Section 31 if that movie is about Giorgio having to bring in refugees from the Terran Empire and find a place for them in the Federation? And for some reason, that had to be like some Section 31 mission. I don't know. But uh,
yeah. I remember thinking, yeah, I like that. In the comments, by the way, Aaron says, based on what that actor said, oh, so that means he's a Borg.
No, I believe him. I think he's telling the truth. I think he's not a Borg. That guy, Robert Kaczynski, I feel sorry for him because I hear him defend this movie so much, and he's a fan of Star Trek. Like, he's at least really familiar with Deep Space Nine, because during like New York Comic Con, he was quoting like Cisco in Deep Space Nine, be like, it's like Cisco said, it's easy to be a saint in paradise, and this is about like the parts of the Star Trek universe that aren't a paradise and stuff like that. And like I want to, like I said, root for this show, but I'm looking at it from, I'm listening to Cisco when he said Section 31 is the bad guy and we got to take him down. And
yeah, Cisco's voice rings a little bit more potently than, kind of seemingly poorly researched uses of them, and sometimes in Discovery.
Yeah, I compare that to like I love Mary Chieffo. I think she did a great job playing the Klingon L'Rell in seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery, and she's a really cool person with fans at conventions and events and stuff. But it's kind of like when she said, "Oh, the Klingons are bald," because it's like in TNG when they said that Kahless made, the legend was he made like the first Batleth out of a lock of his hair. That's why like Klingons like shave their heads when they go into battle, and that's why our Klingons are bald in Discovery. And I'm like, that, I don't know if that's like a good explanation. Also, that legend was explained in that episode Rightful Heir to be a secret thing that only like those Klingon priests knew about, and that's how they said that, like, oh, here's proof that this guy is actually Kahless because he knows how the first Batleth was made. So Mary Chieffo, sorry, like I'm glad your heart is in the right place and you're trying to use the universe to explain this stuff, but that actually like doesn't make sense. I kind of feel like that's the situation with Robert Kaczynski here, but hopefully I'm wrong and this movie is great and adheres to all the stuff we're talking about and works within the Star Trek universe morally and canonically.
There's a great Delton sex scene and.
And Sam Richardson says some funny stuff, and Michelle Yeoh does some neat kung fu moves.
Yeah. We'll know soon enough. What is the premiere date?
It is January 24th. So exactly 2 weeks from day of recording right now. And about that, again, next week, I'll be live Friday night with Joel, and we'll be talking about the history of Section 31 on screen in Star Trek, going all the way back to Deep Space Nine, but also Enterprise, Star Trek Into Darkness, and some of the modern stuff in Discovery and Lower Decks. And then the week after that, Joel and I will be in San Francisco, but Rachel will be hosting a first reaction stream the day that it drops, January 24th. So everyone watch Section 31 as soon as you can on Paramount Plus, and then tune in to Rachel's first reaction stream on YouTube and chime in from the live chat and discuss it with her and the rest of the gang that's there. And then when I return from San Francisco the following week on January 31st, what a perfect day. It's like 3-1 on the calendar. But Friday, January 31st, we'll have our live deep dive discussion, breaking down and discussing Star Trek Section 31.
Right on. I will be listening and maybe commenting to see if we got any of what we were hoping for there.
Yeah, and Dave, if you're free on the day of the that it drops on the 24th, you're more than welcome to join Rachel and crew for the first reaction stream.
Right on.
I'm curious what the reactions of this will be. I would like it to be good. I would like to get more of what our friends at Trek Culture call these long treks instead of short treks, but these made for streaming movies. If they were to do more of these, there's so many cool stories you could tell, and it's so much cheaper to do this streaming movie than to do like an actual theatrical movie. And the turnaround on they just shot. I know it took a long time to finally get cameras rolling on it, but they just shot it a year ago. So and now we're already like getting it on Paramount Plus. So there's a lot of cool potential. Even if this movie is not to my liking, I would still like to see them try more of this.
It'd be a great place to hit up some of those side stories that we're always wanting to see in Trek.
But that's, I guess, all we have for tonight. But again, everyone, come back next week for the Section 31 history lesson recap. And then we'll have the first reaction the week after that, and the deep dive discussion the week after that, and more Trek talk throughout the year. Taylor is about to finish all of Star Trek, and we'll have more to report on. So we'll have her back on the show soon to talk about her reactions, her first time trekking. And we'll also have a season of Strange New Worlds at some point this year. I'm looking forward to 8 of those 10 episodes.
Why 8 of the 10?
Well, because I don't like the Gorn. We know we're going to get like follow up to Gorn cliffhanger. I don't like Strange New Worlds Gorn. And I'm also not looking forward to the Vulcan
wacky episode.
Vulcan wacky episode, yeah, where the humans on the ship turn Vulcan, and
yeah,
that was not. I'm not looking forward to those 2 episodes, but the other 8, it's not my thing with Strange New Worlds. I just rewatched the first 2 seasons with Taylor, and when that show is good, it is so freaking good. Like when Strange New Worlds is great, it is so great. So
yeah.
And when it's bad, it's okay, because like the next episode next week is going to be very different. So
moving on, yeah.
Except for the one time they've done a 2-parter, so it sucks that the one time they do a 2-parter, it's like a story that I'm not into. But oh well, there's still going to be 8 other episodes, and who knows, their Vulcan thing might surprise me. I don't think it will, but it might. But
exciting times.
But yeah, not as much Trek this year as the last couple of years, but that's okay. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. There's a lot of legacy Trek we still haven't talked about, and Dave has said, he suggested at some point he might want to watch Enterprise season 2, so there's always that possibility.
Yeah. Sometimes when that Trek mode hits me, I'm like, I was thinking about that the other day, and I'm like, I'm not necessarily against maybe that Enterprise sooner rather than later, and it's always fun doing those retrospectives.
Well, y'all let us know what you want to see from Tex-Trek in the year 2025, but until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.